Hello and welcome back to the fifth video on the subject of creating a simple object in PHP. So far we have defined the interface, set up the properties, we've set up two of the most important methods in a constructor and a toString function. In this video we're going to look at getters and setters. So this is going to be more improvisational because this is a big one. Like a constructor has a specific purpose, easy to define. A toString, same. Getters and setters. There's a lot of ways you can do these things. So there are magic methods for getters and setters. So that's underscore underscore get, underscore underscore set. And then there's the more specific ones like set properties. So you could manually write them or you can use this generic kind. And so these serve a purpose, and that is so getters get the value of a property. Setters set the value of a property. If you haven't done much of this before, that probably seems overly trivial and like, oh, why would you actually do that? Well, I'm telling you right now, if you're going to create objects that you're going to be using, there's going to be a lot of getters and setters. It's entirely possible that there's a getter and a setter for every property in your object. We only have 3 properties, so that would be a total of 6 methods here, but in a larger program, there's going to be a ton of getters and setters, and they're very simple. They're oftentimes just one-liners. So without talking anymore, let's do it. This one's going to go long, and it's going to get a little weird. I enjoy that, but I don't know. If you're just trying to watch a 2-minute video, this is going to be a few more than 2 minutes. Alright, so we're going to start out talking about those magic methods, and then I'll transition into something else. So you got getters, you got setters. Getters are easier because they are quite simply just going to return the value of this property. So let me show you something here. Show you how this doesn't go. So one thing we can't do is this. Like I want to echo out Ken's name. Now I can't do that because that's a private property. However, I can change that by using a getter, right? So a public function which is going to give me access to a private property. I could make a method called getName, and that would make sense, and that's what I would do, but I want to show you how the whole magic method thing works. So public function underscore get. All right, what are we going to do with this? All right, so we need to figure out a way to make this method know what property it's supposed to return, which to me smells like a parameter. So I'll call that one prop because it's a property. And this is just going to be return this, which is a reference to the calling object. Oh yeah, I wanted to write prop. That's not going to work. Prop is a parameter here, so you know, normally when we're saying this, we don't have the $sign there because we're referencing a property, but when that property name is a variable, that's how you're going to write it. And so now, this right here is actually going to call the getter method, and that right there, it's weird to think, but that thing right there is going to get passed as the parameter to that. So name's going to get passed there, so it's going to return this name. It's not the easiest thing to follow. It's cool. And you know how I said in a big program where you might have like 50 properties, I don't really want to write 50, you know, get this, get that, get this, get that. This right here will probably do what you need. The alternative to that is something like this. For each property in your object. I like this. It's very clear what it is, and this didn't hurt too much to write. The problem is you're going to write that 50 times if you have 50 properties, whereas this right here allows you to generalize it. So I think this is pretty cool. This is the magic method version. This is the more hard-coded manual version. I think they're both fine. I'm going to stick with this one just because I'm going to get more mileage out of it. Now the more difficult one is the setter. So let's do that. And I do think it is less realistic to do a setter because setters are going to be more complicated. Oftentimes a setter is not just setting a property to a value. There might be all kinds of rules for that value. Like maybe that value is a random number. Maybe that value is a random number between a certain range, and maybe different properties have different ranges. If you understand what I'm saying, good. If not, well, it's not that critical that you understand it. But it's less realistic that a setter is just going to be some value. And all this is going to do, this is going to be weird. There's no return. This is a void function. It doesn't return anything. It just does something. And what it does is it sets the calling object's property to some value, right? And I don't know what property it is, and I don't know what value it is. We're going to address that with parameters, but basically it's kind of going to look like this. Prop equals val, something like that. And so notice I have to reference that as a variable. That's a variable because those are arguments, parameters. So I'll call that one prop and that one val. So we're going to have to pass the property that we're setting and the value that we want to set it to. That's a generic setter. All right, so let's do something weird here. Let's go, let's say can name equals Greg. I don't know what I'm doing here, but something. You can kind of see how this is going to go. So there's going to be the two string calls up here, and you're going to see it's going to do the thing that we expected it to do. And then I'm setting Ken's name to Greg, and then I'm going to print out Ken's name, and it's going to be Greg. This is just going to illustrate that this worked. This is weird looking, I think, because this doesn't look like a function call at all, but that name is going to be the first argument, and the second thing, it doesn't look like a, right? There's no comma separating them, there's no parentheses here, but that value that you're passing is going to end up being the second argument to the function. Like I said, if that looks weird, it's fine. I can live with it. It does look weird. So for this one, I will say that does work, but I'm going to do something else. So I keep saying stuff about random numbers, so let's do something interesting with HP this time. We'll make some changes to our program. I think this will inspire you to mess around with it, make your own alterations if that's what you want to do with it. Because I keep saying you could do cool things, but I never do cool things. So let's say I want to make a function called set HP. All right, so I don't need to pass the property. Let's say that I need to do something like pass the, well, like, I don't know. I'm going to do no arguments here. So just to show you how you can do something more complicated, like level is going to be level, right? It's going to go from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. It's going to do predictable things. It's pretty easy to set up, but if you wanted to do something interesting for one of these properties, it'd probably be something like this. So how about this? HP equals this level. So, right, maybe that's a 1, maybe that's a 2, maybe that's a 3. And so that would be a reference to the player's level. Now, if you want to make a random number in PHP, it's this rand function. And rand takes two arguments. It takes a bottom, like a minimum and a maximum. I know, this is going to be gross math, but, you know, this is programming, so these things do happen at some point. You're not going to like the way this looks. I'm just messing around right now. I'm going to do it kind of like this. So I'm going to call this random function, which gives me a random integer between that and that. And so I'm putting these things in parentheses because I'm going to do some kind of gruesome math in here. So let's say that lower end has something to do with level. So see this thing that I wrote right here, this level, reference to the level. Let's say I take that, put that here, I don't know, times 2 or something. And then that's going to be the level times 3. So at this point, and then I'm getting rid of that, right? I had that in the beginning because it made some sense, but now that was just a placeholder. So the hit point is going to be based on multiplying the level by 2, and that's going to be the bottom of your range, and the upper part of your range is going to be level times 3. This is weird, I know, but that's an example of like a more elaborate setter, and where we would probably struggle to do that here, because this thing is essentially just the value, and you'd have to do that gruesome math and pass it as an argument, and you could. And then just to show you one final wrinkle here, just to make this a little more interesting, I'm going to change the level to 5, and instead of just random or arbitrarily assigning that to 10, I'm going to call that function. Actually, I'll say this set HP. Alright, do you see how I made this more interesting? I've been hinting at it the whole time that we could do more interesting things than just assign things to random levels. Gosh, I'm wondering if that needs to come before that, because there's a reference to that. I don't want to get burned with order of operations. So the reason I changed the level is multiplying by 1 gives you very predictable things. But if you multiply by 5, I think we're going to get some random HPs out of this. And so I'm getting rid of all that. And I'm thinking what we're going to do, I think we're going to actually see some random HPs for Ken, and I think that's going to be interesting. Well, that's my definition of interesting, at least. Do you see how they're changing? That's cool, right? That's what I was going for. So my point being, when you're talking about getters and setters do pretty predictable behavior, but I don't know what I said. Did I say getters make for predictable behavior? But setters might be doing more elaborate things based on the thing that you're trying to set. They also might have some error handling built into them, like maybe disallowing strings or negative values or anything above or below a certain cap. So I did want to get into some kind of improvisational, doing some more interesting things at some point, because at some point this doesn't really go anywhere, and I want to give you the tools to do some more interesting things with this, and that's what interesting things look like, is building in some randomness and then you tweak these formulas and figure out what works. So hope you found that helpful. In the next video I will do just one simple custom function, and that will be the end of this, because so far all we've talked about is magic methods, which clearly have purpose and are worth talking about, and going forward it's just what do you want it to do. Thanks for watching.